happy wife.
Yeah.
Pretty good life. And so, but not so happy for those people that probably lost some cryptocurrency a few days before Valentine's Day. So what we're talking about today, one of the big topics and stories and, actually correlates a lot into one of the biggest questions we get, which is crypto support, meaning like what cryptocurrencies we choose to support.
Whoa.
And we put that on mute because we don't want to be hearing ourselves talk at the same time. But so what we're talking about today is the IOTA Heist, which had happened. There was a hack on some IOTA infrastructure, not only infrastructure, but software wallets. But more importantly, what effect that had on the IOTA network. And, we'll kind of go back and actually talk a bit about the IOTA network, its architecture. You've actually done a different podcast about IOTA. Did you do one of those with Captain Crypto a while back?
I feel like a long time ago I actually did something about IOTA. I know I've talked about it on the podcast, but I don't know which podcast it was.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, one of our developers, Captain Crypto, hosted a podcast about a year or two ago, and William occasionally would be on there talking about various protocols. And I believe IOTA might have been one of them, if anything.
Yeah.
If anything, we've definitely talked about it internally, and it's one of the protocols that we've evaluated, and actually one of the few that we've decided not to, explicitly not to support. But let's get back to this heist, and we'll go into a bit about the protocol.
Right.
So IOTA is what many people refer to a blockchain project without a blockchain. So it has this DAG architecture, but lets you send and receive tokens, supposed to be super fast and quick, fast confirmations. But recently it was announced that there may be an issue with the primary open source wallet that was developed by the IOTA Foundation called Trinity. And so the wallet was released around 2018, I think the desktop version in August of 2018, and a mobile version of it in September of 2018. And it's open source, it's on GitHub, but they believe that funds that have been recently been taken were possibly due to an issue inside of the software, just potentially bugs in the software that may have leaked out the coins, or maybe didn't secure the seed as well on a desktop device.
So I actually don't know what happened because I didn't even read the articles that you were talking about the other day.
Yeah, we bring on one because he does know a lot about the architecture, but the articles themselves are simply, so we don't know exactly how coins are left. One thing we do know
is I was asking Paul, like, hey, can you send me the article that talks about this hack? And I'm like, oops, there's no article to really, it doesn't say anything. It's just actually, like, it happened.
Actually, a lot isn't really known.
Yeah, exactly.
About the hack.
Like, there's no real information.
Yeah, even in the articles, they say that people were affected that were running the Trinity software. So if you are running the IOTA Trinity software, we highly recommend that you don't. Turn off the application, take your seed out, and uninstall the application until you hear any further from the IOTA Foundation. What is known is that about 10 people so far have been reported affected, 9 of which were on a Windows machine, or one was on a Mac, but nobody on mobile.
Okay.
So it's possible there may have been malware that was specifically targeting a vulnerability in the specific software that was deployed on desktop, which is much easier to deploy on desktop.
Oh, sure.
Than it is on mobile.
Well, the other thing is we've had wallet hacks before, especially if the wallet software is written in JavaScript. It's relatively easy to get this particular social attack in and then get your malicious software included actually into the wallet itself.
The wallet itself, right. And so that may be the issue, although the fact that they actually use common code across both their mobile and their desktop application, yet nobody on mobile has been affected.
That might not
seems to lean that
that
might not be the issue, although that is one concern that people generally should be aware of.
So the way that particular attack works is there's an ecosystem of packages called NPM, and NPM has just tons of different software, all kinds of different stuff. And it's very convenient to just, if you want like icons or something, you go on NPM and say NPM add cool icons, and they're installed as part of your app and you just use them, and it makes development very easy. The problem is you don't know where these icons are coming from. And so somebody who wants to hack a wallet software might say, oh, look, this app is using cool icons. So let's go into cool icons, pay someone, sneak something in, and inject our malicious code. And then the next time they update their icon library, bam, they're compromised.
Exactly. So this is a problem with just general open source dependencies. This
Right.
predates even JavaScript, although JavaScript made it very, very easy for developers. or
NPM in particular,
specifically,
made it very easy.
made it very easy for developers to use even the smallest of libraries, and easy to publish and easy to use small libraries. And so we have this kind of dependency chain in a lot of open source software development, even closed
very
source.
paranoid about our package lock files now, like always making sure if something's changed, why did it get installed, what's new, and is this
Right.
a risk to us?
Exactly, and so that is one of the inherent risks of is in general software development. As you might not know, in a lot of software development, you don't build everything from scratch. And so you have to depend on some other software that someone else has written at some degree. It's impossible to write everything from scratch. And now the big question being, does any of the software you depend on potentially have a vulnerability? So this could have been one of the issues.
Could have been
one of the issues with the Trinity software. It doesn't appear to be that way.
It could just be
because of
malware on PCs.
Exactly.
Who
It could be
knows?
malware that you get on a personal computer, which is much more vulnerable than a mobile device. We'll know a little as soon as we hear a little bit more. We'll try to get that covered in maybe either a future podcast or on social media. But be warned if you are running into that software. Right now, it's believed to have been compromised. I believe it was 1.1 or 1.2 million worth of IOTA were taken. 1.6 million of IOTA were stolen from what's believed to be that software, because all of the people who had funds stolen were recently running the software. And so this is what brings about a more interesting issue
is their response to this
response.
particular thing. And that is actually kind of terrifying, because what they did is they said, oh, we're just going to shut down the IOTA network. And you think, wait a moment here. You can't, people have been trying to shut down Bitcoin for years. How can you shut down a cryptocurrency network? It's
apparently a lot easier than you think, especially with IOTA.
Because IOTA, turns out, is centralized. It's not actually a cryptocurrency.
It's barely a cryptocurrency. Sure, it uses cryptography. It has private keys. You can sign transactions. I don't believe there's any actual encryption. There is hashing. And actually one of the hashing algorithms used in IOTA called curl went under huge criticism from the cryptography community when they had launched it. And vulnerabilities in it were actually pointed out. And they nearly went and filed a lawsuit against the people that pointed out the vulnerabilities to their hashing algorithm.
Oh, that's not, no.
But eventually actually went and changed it.
Oh, good.
So they
At least
rolled
they did
their
something.
own. They rolled their own cryptography, which in the world of applied cryptography is generally a no-no.
No, you don't. You always use the standard stuff that's been vetted by huge numbers of
Exactly.
people. Well, the other thing is the hash function was super bizarre. I think it was like base 3 or something strange like that.
Yeah,
like
that wasn't even that was from curl. One called curl.
It wasn't like binary. It was like some weird number.
ugh.
So they had to do like weird hacks in order to make it. Was like the stupidest. Like I don't
Meaning it doesn't work on regular, good old-fashioned computers.
Well, from what I understood when I was doing my original research on this, which is like 2 years ago, so I don't remember everything exactly, but it was started by a group of people who were trying to make some kind of Internet of Things system using base 3 hardware.
Hence the name IOTA.
Yeah.
Internet of Things and then an A.
But they were interested in base 3 computing hardware, which does exist. I think in Soviet Russia there might have been a base 3 computer at one point in the weird history of technology.
I want to give people a little background on what exactly is base 3 versus base 2.
Okay, so in a typical computer, you have bits. A bit can either be a 0 or a 1. It's only on or off, like a light switch, right? Mm-hmm. And then based on if you can have like if this is on and that is off, then we will put this light switch on or whatever. So you can do like
logic on it. You can also do numbers.
Well, so you say, okay, the first one can be on or off. So that's 2 combinations. I'll get another one that can be on or off. That's
so
another
2 bits effectively give you more combinations.
4 combinations, right?
Exactly.
Give you another one. So there's 2 for that, 2 for the next, 2 for that gives you 8 combinations. So you can count using these. So anyway, there's a whole system of basically storing data, doing calculations and everything using on and off as kind of the basic principle that everything is derived from. Mm-hmm. Now a base 3 computer has 3 states: on, off, and middle.
Right, something in the middle.
Like a light switch
like 0,
with
1, and 0.5.
like a dimmer or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
0.5 right in the middle of that light switch versus just being on and off.
So instead of if A and B, it's like if A is really on or like half on. I don't know how that works.
Well, we're used to base 2 computers. We call it base 2 because there's only 2 values that effectively a circuit or a bit can have.
Right.
Now you can add a bunch of bits together to give you values like 3, 4, 5. And in a way, the closest analogy to this to regular humans is base 10
Right.
because we have 10 fingers. And so every value that we think in our head, 0 through 9, is a value of a number based on 10 potential values. So it has 10 potential values, and you add another digit, which can have 10 potential values. You add another digit that can have 10 potential values. That's how we create our number system, which is the decimal number system. Computers, each of their, I guess you could say, hands can have 2 different values on or off. And that's very simply represented in voltage. Base 3 is where each digit can have 3 different values.
And they design their hashing function around this concept that they have base 3 hardware, which doesn't actually exist, right? So it's like, why would they do that? Well, they were part of some earlier startup that was working on that. They pivoted to do an ICO, like it's token.
ICO, cryptocurrency.
Yeah, because that's where the real money is, right? And then they designed it all. It's very kind of a strange architecture. That's why they had their custom hashing. Anyway, that's not even relevant to this discussion.
It's still, but it's a very interesting topic to realize, where is this organization, company, group of people coming from, and what was their motivation?
They're not cryptography experts by any stretch of the imagination. They're
in a way hardware to some
hardware
degree,
guys who kind of got into
maybe
it.
experts in what they're doing, but building something that doesn't necessarily apply into the cryptography realm, and definitely not the cryptocurrency realm.
Anyway, I mean, people can become experts in anything, though.
They
So
can,
we could give them. We shouldn't like just give a blanket statement like they don't know what they're doing, but their history of actions has indicated that they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, their history of actions has been riddled with a few errors. This definitely isn't the first one. So I know that you had reviewed, you had talked to me about
I actually read their white paper years ago.
Yep.
Okay, and at this time, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I thought about some. I'm like, wait, that can't possibly work. And so
let's go over that part. What part of it did you read and said, there's no way that this part could really work the way they intended?
So I think before we kind of talk about IOTA, I kind of want to talk about what Satoshi actually invented. Because we have this concept of coming to an agreement about who has what money, right? That is what we're trying to do in a cryptocurrency. Agree who has what money when. And you have all these actors, not all of who are trustworthy, right? They're all sitting around and they're all trying to talk to each other and come to an agreement, but you can't really trust anybody. And that's called the Byzantine general's problem, because you get these messages from the outside world. You don't know if the person that sent them is lying to you or not. Yep. And the general consensus in computer science is that it takes about 2/3 of them to be honest, and then using various kind of protocols and procedures, you can figure out who the other third are and get rid of them or ignore them.
Ignore their response. Yeah.
So in a money system, though, you'd have to assume everybody's dishonest, because everybody, if I just send some dishonest messages, I get $1 million for free, like everyone's going to do that, right?
Everyone's selfish in the sense that, especially in an anonymous money system.
So the assumption before Satoshi was it's not possible to have a decentralized Byzantine fault-tolerant money system. It's just not possible. Everybody thought it was literally like mathematically, like you can't do it. Satoshi's invention wasn't a computer science invention. It was a human invention. He basically discovered, wait, we can make sure that more than 2/3 are honest by a very simple mechanism. Have them put skin in the game.
If they're money in the game, right?
If they're dishonest, they will lose their money. They will lose whatever they put in, and then they'll be out. So they will have this monetary incentive to be honest people.
Now, what you're saying, well, for some people that are listening to the podcast, probably sound like put skin in the game, put money in the game. That sounds like proof of stake.
Proof of stake is a very direct kind of way to manifest that, right? In the sense that I put actual cash on the table and say, if I sign 2 conflicting blocks, my cash is forfeit.
Right.
Take it away from me, right?
But proof of work also is
proof of work is also because it costs money, it takes time, it takes electricity and hardware to mine a block.
Right.
And so if I mine 2 conflicting blocks, one of them is going to win, the other will not. And so my investment in the block that's not going to win is forfeit.
Right.
So I've got skin in the game, whether it be electricity or whether it be actual money on the table.
Direct or indirect.
Yeah, I'm definitely putting resources in. So that is why cryptocurrencies exist, because we have this now social mechanism for coming to an agreement and being honest.
Right. So we want to actually answer the right, provide the right answer to the question of who has the money,
exactly.
Who has enough money, is this transaction valid? Otherwise, we effectively lose money. And yes, that's a great way to make people honest. That's how we do it, generally speaking, in real life. So you just applied it in a network of a bunch of people that don't even need to provide their name, don't need to have a reputation. So how does this carry over into IOTA and its architecture?
IOTA's architecture is you have no blocks. There's no blocks. It's just transactions. So I broadcast a transaction out into the network. How does the network decide that that transaction is valid and acceptable? And the answer is every new transaction has to sort of check off on 2 previous transactions. So the idea is I broadcast my transaction out there in the world. It has no kind of credibility. Somebody else comes along. They do a spend completely irrelevant to mine, but they kind of check off like, I checked your transaction. It's good. Okay. So every transaction is itself kind of also a block that's checking other stuff.
Got it.
Well, what goes into a transaction is just, the inputs, the money that's being spent and all that sort of stuff, and a little bit of hashing power, like not much,
Right, you actually had to have, that was one thing that was unique about IOTA, is you actually had to provide a little bit of proof of work with your transaction, but a fairly negligible
like
amount.
a 1 second on a cell phone type of it's not like a huge, like epic, like hash, like building a Bitcoin
At that point,
block.
what was even the point of requiring you to provide
Just so
any
you
amount
wouldn't spam with like millions of transactions per second. You have to do some work. You
do a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Well, ironically, as networks or computational power starts to increase, that can become insignificant.
Oh yeah.
Like it already takes a little bit of computational power just to sign a transaction.
Yeah. But they wanted to make it a little bit more.
Just a tiny bit more.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so I am a fraudulent person in this system, and I say, okay, I'm going to broadcast 2 conflicting transactions, one that pays Paul and the other pays Peter, and I'm going to send them out there. I don't have money to fund both of them. I only have 1 unit, but I'm going to pay 1 unit to both of them because then the 2 transactions will be confused, and that's my double spend.
Right.
Well, now all I have to do is do a bunch of bogus activity with myself, back and forth between 2 wallets, or maybe I control a couple hundred addresses or whatever, and have some of my bogus activity confirm transaction A and some confirm transaction B. What have I got to lose?
And that bogus activity is just sending money back and forth between yourself and potentially actually sending valid money, like you're not double spending.
Real money.
So even though it's bogus activity, it's actually valid transactions.
Yeah, I just have a $10,000 sitting in an account. I just kind of slosh it back and forth a couple thousand, couple million, couple trillion times, whatever. And now I've got these 2 transactions that conflict with each other that are like super validated
by a lot of other transactions that have a small amount of hashing power.
But so which one's real? How do we decide which of those 2 branches is the correct branch?
Exactly.
And I have no problem creating bogus branches like that because I have no skin in the game. It costs me nothing other than a little hash rate to throw these huge piles of confirmations on top.
Right.
And that's the problem. There's no skin in the game. The IOTA architecture does not have stake. It does not have real mining in any serious capacity. So there's nothing to lose. And so it's super easy to just, double spend all day long and create chaos. And you're not Byzantine fault tolerant.
And so their white paper explicitly mentioned that this is how they achieve consensus, is with little tiny bit of proof of work and transactions needing to be built on top of other transactions. And you can look at the network and say, yeah, there's enough transactions built on top of another transaction, I'll simply accept it. But ironically, that's not the current state of the IOTA network.
Right. So when I read the white paper, before this had even happened, I was like, oh, that doesn't seem like it actually. At first, I was really excited. Like, this is a really cool idea. It's really innovative. And then I thought about it some more. I'm like, wait, this isn't going to work. And then you said, actually, a couple weeks later,
the IOTA network and the IOTA Foundation actually had to change the network and make all transactions go through them.
They made a coordinator or
coordinator.
Coordinator, right.
A coordinator that actually has to validate all transactions, which effectively fully centralizes the network around
their
IOTA
whole
Foundation.
Consensus mechanism didn't work. Yep. Bottom line, they had this idea. They missed in a key point of what Satoshi had done. They screwed up. And instead of shutting down the network, which would have been the honest thing to do,
right,
or hard forking to something like proof of stake or whatever, they said, no, we're going to insert our fully centralized server to basically track who's got what money.
Exactly.
And as soon as you have a fully centralized server tracking who's got what money, guess what? You're PayPal.
Yep.
Your Xbox points.
In a way, you're worse than PayPal and you're worse than Xbox points because you've published a white paper and are claiming one thing, but actually implementing 100% different architecture than what's claimed. And that's probably the issue that we come to grips with, which is why we say IOTA, as of right now, with its current implementation and current architecture, is a coin that we've chosen not to support inside of Edge. Obviously, there's many other reasons why we would or would not support a coin, including engineering resources, how hard it is, and consumer demand. But IOTA has been in the top 10 of the cryptocurrency market cap. It's, I think, just a hair below top 20. But the fact that it is claimed to have a specific architecture has had to retract that and fully centralize the architecture, but still claim it being a decentralized cryptocurrency.
Oh yeah,
is effectively a
they're
lie.
straight up lying. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, because they say that they're a cryptocurrency, but they're not. They're like I said, PayPal or Xbox points, which is fine. I mean, if you go to PayPal and you put money in their system, or you go to any crypto exchange and deposit US dollars, you know what you're getting is a balance on some centralized ledger somewhere, and you're fine with that. Like that's what it says on the tin.
Even the stable coins can be fully centralized, but they claim that. They're
Yeah.
not, none of the stable coins are saying, no, this is an algorithmic, hedged, decentralized
Except for
stable coin,
DAI.
except for DAI. But all the other ones are claiming, nope, there's dollars in a bank. There's gold in a bank. There's a basket of assets in a bank. And they're making that very transparent and clear and admitting to its level of centralization. I think that's really the key thing is admit to your level of centralization and then see how the public reacts to it and whether or not your product gets adopted. But the entire ICO of IOTA and its entire lifetime has been built around a white paper that is designed or specifies an architecture which it was not able to uphold.
Yeah, they specified an architecture that they didn't work, so they switched to a centralized architecture, yet they maintained the veneer of a blockchain. They still have wallet software,
Right, exactly.
which sends transactions, and they do go peer-to-peer to the other peers, but it doesn't mean anything. It's all just smoke and mirrors because at the end of the day, it's the central server that confirms things.
Yep, exactly. And in this $1.6 million heist of 10 people's funds, right now IOTA is working with law enforcement to obviously find where did the funds go and look for who stole them, blah, blah, blah. But in the meantime, they've just simply halted the network.
They shut down their central server, so it's no longer possible to do IOTA transactions as of today.
Exactly. And it just took the entity of the foundation to decide to do that.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, we don't know whether or not it's law enforcement that asked them to do it or if they just chose to do it themselves. But if you think about it, the fact that they chose to do it themselves means that law enforcement could have been the one that asked them to do that.
Yeah.
And you have pretty much a, well, not non-censorship resistant cryptocurrency that can be, if arbitrarily chosen, controlled by any government that can put force on the IOTA
Exactly.
foundation. So not that this can't be changed in the future.
They could turn around, do an about face and say, hey, we screwed up. We're sorry. We're going to do proof of stake. We're going to do proof of work. We're going to do some of these architectures that have already been proven to work in a decentralized manner. And we're going to fix IOTA.
Right. And so,
but I don't
right
think
now,
they're
that's not the
motivated
state.
to do that.
But definitely, if it ever does happen and they do change, it's something that we'll look at again and reevaluate and see whether or not it's something that's worth incorporating into our platform and product. I remember I put out this post that we're doing this talk on a few different channels, and there was some hurrah about these centralized blockchains and thanks for protecting your users against these scams. But it was mentioned in the same sentence that thanks for protecting your users against the centralized scams such as IOTA and other cryptocurrencies, some of which we support, such as Ripple. And ironically, as many people think that Ripple is centralized, it has elements of centralization, but they don't come even close.
Well, the other thing
to
about
the level
Ripple
of IOTA.
Well, the other thing about Ripple is at least you're getting what they say you're going to get.
They're completely their architecture is exactly what their white paper specifies.
Yeah.
Right. And the level of centralization and decentralization of Ripple is based on the current state of the network and how many people have chosen to run validators on the network.
Well, the way it works
how
with
you
them,
set up your
your
nodes.
skin in the game in Ripple is not anybody can just come in off the network, install some software, and become a node, right? Your skin in the game is you know somebody who got you in the golden circle of Ripple validators.
So actually, there is a golden circle of Ripple validators. But in Ripple, nobody has to trust the golden circle of Ripple validators. You can come in and trust someone else that trusts the golden circle of Ripple validators. And so you can create your own circle of friends and nodes, which maybe are loosely connected to the list of validators that Ripple, the company, have in their golden circle. But it doesn't require that architecture.
But I guess my point is really what it comes down to, though your cluster of friends, sure, you're running the software, but you're fundamentally kind of linked to this cluster of people who are like, in the circle.
Those are what most exchanges and wallet providers,
which is where the value of the coin comes from.
But it's the decision of the exchanges and the wallet providers to connect to the golden circle or someone very close to the golden circle.
I guess my point is that Ripple does have skin in the game in the sense that if you start misbehaving, you're going to get
they can pull you out.
They're going to get it pulled out in some way, shape, or form, whether that be exchanges distrusting you or the Ripple themselves distrusting you.
Right.
So they've basically taken the idea of social credit, right?
It's social credit, exactly that. But there's no monetary skin in the game.
So you have electricity, you have money, and you have social credit.
Exactly.
So which of the three is the weakest? I would say social credit. So Ripple is not necessarily what I would consider the best architecture, but
Right. It's honest.
it's, at least it is what it says it is.
Exactly.
Right?
It's honest in what it says it is in the white paper.
But again, I personally don't hold any because I would prefer actual proof of work coins. Right.
Exactly.
Like that's just my choice.
I'm making more of the comparison with IOTA because a lot of people lump it into the same bucket, but there's both a nuanced but yet significant difference between the two from the viewpoint of, yes, the honesty of what they claim the network is doing versus what it is.
I would say electricity, number one, right? Physics,
Yep.
can't argue with the block hash, right? Stake, number two. Social credit, number three. Centralized server, I don't even, it's not even on the chart.
Yeah, it's not on the chart. Gone, completely gone.
So anyway,
that's our assessment of the situation. It's William's assessment of, and hopefully got a little bit out of how the IOTA architecture works. There are other DAGs out there that have this concept of not a specific chain.
Well, let's talk about Hedera.
Actually, do you feel like you have a good understanding of Hedera we can cover for the last few minutes of the
I have
podcast?
a cursory understanding. I've read the white
Okay.
paper, so I guess that counts, right?
Yeah.
And Hedera is proof of stake, straight up, just proof of stake, right? So when you go to make a block, you're gonna or a transaction. That's again they confuse the idea of a block and a transaction, but there's money that's to be lost if you screw up.
Got it.
And so there you have the concept of like skin in the game
And the proof of stake is basically a bunch of validators, in my understanding, a bunch of validators that do validate transactions, and they do have to put in an amount of currency that they could lose if they validate invalid transactions.
Exactly.
Though the main difference is that, or it means similarity between Hedera and IOTA is the concept of a DAG.
Right.
So
So
the transactions aren't
in a blockchain,
blocks.
it's block, one after the other. And in a DAG, it's blocks are kind of peers with each other. They could maybe disagree, but at the end of the day, you're kind of coming to the consensus between multiple blocks. Almost.
Got it. Okay. And
But
so,
at least those blocks, you're not going to get fraudulent blocks in the list. It's all going to be valid blocks that are kind of like confirming what each others are doing.
yeah. And if you do get a fraudulent block, someone lost money.
Exactly.
Is the whole
And that's
concept.
how it maintains honesty.
Exactly. So in this big talk of architecture of blockchains and DAGs and centralized versus centralized, we have what is our Friday word of the day. And so word of the day. So recap, if you want to win $20 worth of Bitcoin, you must have already retweeted our word of the day tweets that come from the @EdgeWallet Twitter account. At some point earlier in the week, we sent them out starting Wednesday, Thursday, during the week. If you've already retweeted that and you want to win $20, now take one of those and reply to it with your Bitcoin QR code from Edge and mention the word of the day, which is
Centralized, not decentralized like what we liked, but centralized like as in PayPal.
as in PayPal, as in Chase, as in IOTA. Sorry to say. But for now, once again, they could change. But for now, yes. So centralized is the word of the day. Go ahead and reply to one of the previous this week's tweets mentioning the word of the day promotion and include a screenshot of your Edge QR code. But cool. So centralized is it. We do have a few questions that we should answer.
Oh, nice.
So Sir Joshua asks, what is the most famous crypto in the U.S. besides Bitcoin? I presume that Sir Joshua is not from the U.S. Maybe he's from England.
I think
Sir Joshua.
Ethereum?
Ethereum. It's depends what you mean by most famous. Market cap definitely helps give you an idea of infamy and how famous something might be. And Ethereum is second in the market cap. And so I'd say probably even in the world, it might be the second most popular.
I think the other thing too is when we were back in 2015, right? It was Bitcoin. Everything was Bitcoin. But then there was a lot of Ethereum meetups, a lot of people talking about Ethereum, right?
Yeah, even before it got officially launched.
Yeah,
that was
like,
probably
it was
the
big,
next.
it was hot.
It was probably the second meetup. Second cryptocurrency meetup that didn't have the title Bitcoin in it. Like there
Exactly.
were actually meetups for another cryptocurrency because there were almost no Namecoin meetups or Litecoin meetups or whatnot. But Ethereum actually created a meetup community. And so easily, not just in the US, but probably around the world.
And even now you see all the apps and cool stuff on Ethereum, right?
No, exactly. It's building kind of the decentralized financial infrastructure on top of decentralized cryptocurrency. So hopefully that answers the question. I feel like, I'm not sure that we're giving any additional insight to that, but definitely in the US and probably most parts of the world, Ethereum is easily the second most famous crypto aside from Bitcoin. And then another question, didn't read too much about Bakkt. Did it go well? Bakkt as in BKKT. Oh, more centralized infrastructure for cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And so Bakkt is a futures platform where people can deposit money and then take out a bet on the price of Bitcoin. But one of the unique things about Bakkt is that it settles in actual Bitcoin. So when you close out your position, you can actually receive real Bitcoin as opposed to it being what some people would call a synthetic. So you can always make synthetic bets on anything around the world. Will this fly land on the table and stay there for 10 seconds? Well, I'll put $10 on it. Will Bitcoin go up to a certain price? Well, I'll put $100 on that and place that bet against someone else. But once you win or lose the bet, your money comes back in some other currencies such as dollars. Well, the big thing with BACT and the big news that they had was we're going to settle it in actual Bitcoin, meaning they actually have to hold Bitcoin and people have to deposit Bitcoin in order to be able to use the system. Now, that might sound good and valuable, but it's not proving that that is necessarily appealing or that provides specific appeal to the type of investors that are looking at doing these type of futures contracts.
Well, if you want to bet on the price of Bitcoin, a good way to do it is to buy Bitcoin.
That's one way to do it, exactly. Although if you want to bet on the price of Bitcoin
going
down, it's hard to just buy Bitcoin. You have to you have to kind of borrow it.
Yeah.
Or you just put a bet against it, right? And someone else will put the counter bet against it, and that's what a lot of these hedging platforms are effectively doing. But I don't think BACT's doing poorly. I hear about quarter over quarter that their volumes are going up, and they're getting mentioned a lot in the news.
People love gambling. It's
great.
Love
gambling. Sure. Yep. Gambling, whether it be, holding dollars, that's gambling, or going to Vegas, that's gambling. Either way, people gamble in one way, shape, or form, and BACT is one of the ways that people do so. So I think they're doing well. To me personally, it's not that interesting, those projects, because they're just taking existing financial services that are fully centralized and only work in certain parts of the world, and of course have to impart censorship resistance, and just putting crypto into it. And that doesn't really achieve any of the fundamental goals, but I guess for some people that's what they're used to.
I think Gen 1 tech is going to be a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of, we got centralized exchanges, right? We've got centralized betting. We've got but
I remember back in 2014, a lot of the tools on top of Bitcoin were just centralized versions
of all the things.
Stock exchange. I remember there were actual stock exchanges that were anonymous, which is weird concept. Loan products.
Oh yeah.
Loan products that were fully centralized. But I think, we talked about Ethereum. The next wave is actually taking those and making them, once again, censorship resistant, globally accessible, much more decentralized.
And we're starting to see some of that. Like we have one decentralized exchange in Edge total,
which is actually a culmination of multiple decentralized exchanges all in one.
Well, in Edge. Right?
Inside of Edge.
They're an aggregator, right?
They're an aggregator of multiple decentralized.
So if you want to actually do decentralized, no central authority, no market maker, just completely on the blockchain swaps, you go from ERC20 token to other ERC20 token through total. But that's only the first one.
That's only the first one. So we're hoping to have more out there. Maybe even looking at some decentralized exchanges that are on other chains, such as RSK or EOS. But it's all still in the future and roadmap. Let us know if you find that you have strong opinions about some other decentralized products, DeFi products and architectures.
So I think BACT would be an example of just the kind of thing that's Gen 1. It'll be replaced.
It's kind of Gen 1. Yeah, it has its purpose right now. And we incorporate some centralized services inside of Edge as well.
Anything that has to do with dollars has to be centralized because dollars themselves require that. But
right, and especially at least for a temporary period of time, it's centralized. You're buying Bitcoin with a credit card. Well, it's going to pass through a service that is centralized in order for you to get the crypto.
But then you hold it in your decentralized wallet when you're done.
Exactly.
We'd like to see more swap providers, but until then,
Cool. All right, we're just about out of time, so we'll cover kind of upcoming events. For those that are in Southern California or San Diego, we actually have another Bitcoin meetup happening in a couple weeks where
I didn't know about this.
I know, I'm just remembering it right now, actually. The team at Alexandria, which are the developers and I guess you call it founders, innovators of the Open Index protocol, which is actually getting used by a few government projects. And is backed by the Medici project. Medici Ventures is going to be presenting over here in downtown. I can almost point to exactly where they're going to be. So that's on February 27th, Thursday evening, over at the Union Cowork Space. As well, our team at Edge will be over at Bitcoin 2020. So a few of us are going to head over there in San Francisco in March. So definitely come and check us out. Reach out if you are going and want to hook up and chat crypto, chat Bitcoin. And then as well, our controller, Jessica, will be headed over to Unconfiscatable in Vegas, which is actually end of next week, I believe. So end of next week, that should be a good time. She'll be entering the pinball tournament, going to the carnivore dinner, with Tone Vase. So feel free to say hi to her, fire off any questions you might have about heck, what it's like to do accounting in crypto, which is definitely one of the big pain points. It's not an easy thing to do.
I definitely
we don't make her life
feel
easy.
for her.
Yeah,
she struggles.
She definitely struggles.
And it's like, I just like, you know what, we made this hard on you, and I'm
we made
sorry.
it hard on you in a way. It was our fault, but that's because we want to know how crypto is hard.
Yeah.
And we've definitely have found out many ways that crypto is hard, and we're looking at making fixes and tools to fix that. So thanks, Jess, for being patient and for helping with this accounting nightmare that is cryptocurrency. So feel free to say hi to her in Vegas for Unconfiscatable. And until next Friday.
Not your keys, not your coins.
Yep. And even if you have your keys, it's really not your coins if you're on IOTA. All right. See you guys later. Bye.